And your name?
Boom. All right. Hello, everyone. Like Les said, my name is Matthew Amenta. I'm an outdoor education student. Thank you for joining us today. The name of my presentation is Fishing for an Internship. I thought that was funny because it works on multiple levels. All right, so moving right along. So my internship was at the fly rod shop right off Route 100, right on the Waterbury-Stowe line. And the purpose of my internship, and really the purpose of why I took the outdoor education major, was to become a guide in some capacity. So I really wanted to hone my guiding skills. I had been teaching snowboarding for roughly 10 years, but kind of wanted to broaden my horizons in the sense of doing something that I had never really taught before and just always did as a hobby. And to make myself more valuable in the outdoor education industry, having a wider repertoire of things I can do, and just getting some really good experience while doing something I enjoy. And I think it's every person's dream to become the boss one day, right? So I want to know how to run a business and what goes into running a multifaceted business like the fly rod shop. And fourth of all, to become a better fly angler myself, and the wealth of knowledge I've accrued from my short internship has been huge. And learn how to market my services and get my name out there and become a reputable and professional guide. So in the guiding section, I was responsible for doing beginner fly fishing tours, which I quickly realized that only 20% of the work is going out and catching a fish. Everything else is prepping to go catch the fish. So there's a lot of work that goes into it, getting the gear ready, and having a good rapport with the clients I found to be really crucial in being a successful guide. The casting clinics we do at the fly rod shop, they're free, so anybody and everyone can show up and take an hour and 15-minute casting clinic, and that's really awesome because you never know what's going to walk in through the door until that person walks through the door. So that it kind of keeps you on your toes, and you have to learn how to improvise. And Family Gone Fishing, that picture right there is me and a group of kids from the Apple Tree Daycare Center. And they were great, and that's a spin fishing program, and that's just, regular rod and reel, hook and worm kind of fishing. And I found that to be really rewarding. Even though it wasn't necessarily challenging, I had a ball doing that, absolutely. And something I didn't even realize the fly rod shop did was van tours. I currently run all the van tours at the fly rod shop. We do a Taste of Vermont tour and a covered bridge tour, which surprisingly enough are some of our most popular programs over there. So that kind of was a curveball for me. But I feel like I adapted pretty well, and it's just another example of how you have to always be on your toes. I was also honored to participate in a Boy Scouts merit badge program at Mount Norris Scout Reservation in Eden, Vermont. That was really awesome. Being a former Boy Scout myself, I was happy to give back to the scouting community, and by far was the most challenging of all my responsibilities and tasks to do during my internship. It was challenging to have a group of 10 kids by myself and trying to just keep every fishing line untangled proved to be a challenge. Our kids programs, we do, like I said, we do things through Appletree, and there was one day in particular where we had a spin fishing / how to fillet a rainbow trout, and we also cooked up some crawdads from the pond right outside, and so I went through how to do that, and half the kids were like, gross, and the other kids were like, this is awesome. And so I feel like the kids programs and the Family Gone Fishing tours were probably the most rewarding tours I got to participate in. So aside from all that fun stuff, we'll call it, I had a lot of responsibilities in the marketing side of the business. I was an admin for their Facebook and Instagram. The welcome breakfast I would go to Smuggler's Notch, and the new arrivals, I would kind of just promote the fly fishing tours and other related tours that we were offering over there. And also that little setup right over here is the farmer's market at Smuggler's Notch. If you went there, you probably saw me. Retail. We are an outfitter. We have everything for sale there. And running the retail shop was quite a challenge. In particular, running the register. All my math professors will tell you that is not my strong suit. So that was quite a learning curve for me, but I've been running it pretty well ever since, and I think I've adapted well. Benefits of the internship: I have just accepted a full-time job with the fly rod shop, so that's awesome. I think I had such a great time doing what I did there that I couldn't turn it down. I gained a wealth of experience, and I'm still gaining experience, and I'm excited to see where that takes me. And there's not many businesses now where you can sit down and have a one-on-one with the owner of the business day in and day out, and I found that to be really, really valuable. So if you can get yourself an internship where you're that up close and personal with the runnings of the business, I would highly recommend that. And I was able to do things I had never done, given a lot of responsibility, and at times that was daunting, but it was good for me to learn and kind of adapt to each one of those changes. And more importantly, I had a ball doing what I'm doing, and I think I'm going to continue to have fun. And that's it.
Are there any questions for Matt?
Questions? Yes?
How did this change you, this experience?
I think it has ramped up my level of professionalism quite a bit. Even doing things like this, public speaking, every Monday morning I go and speak at the welcome breakfast at Smuggler's Notch. So I've gotten a lot more comfortable talking in front of, large groups of people. So that's probably the most dramatic way that it's changed me. Any other questions? Yes?
What was your largest challenge as you were working as a guide?
Largest challenge is working as a guide. That's a very good question. I would say not so much keeping an eye on people, but paying attention to what I'm doing and getting ready for the people to come by, making sure I have all my ducks in a row, because you don't want to get out there and realize you forgot something crucial. I think that's what makes my stomach turn every time I think about it. So really being prepared and having that self-awareness and being proactive in what you're going to bring and having a good forethought of what's going to happen and having a good game plan is crucial, and I think that's the most important and challenging. Yes?
When you're going out on these, or you're guiding a tour,
Absolutely.
do you
pick the spots that you're going fishing, or are they kind of already set in place? What's your job in that?
So it's free reign. So the guides pick where they want to go. So for like a half-day tour, which is 4 hours, I'll try to stick to the Greater Stowe area. But when it's a full-day tour, I come back to my home turf of Johnson, right in the Lamoille, because I know all the good spots there. And of course, I'm always open and talking to other guides and seeing where they fish. But there's no hard and fast rule about where you need to go. Yes. Yes.
Hi, Mike. I'm Sarah. I'm curious, when you made the final decision to accept employment at the fly rod shop,
Sure.
yes, you had a blast, but is the money worth it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. No, I found, compared to teaching snowboarding, I made next to nothing in tips, but I will say that the tips in fly fishing are quite substantial, and for whatever you're lacking in the hourly wage, you're more than making up for in tips. So yes, it was, but the money wasn't the only factor I had that brought me to the conclusion of taking this job. I said, because I know many people that graduate and don't have jobs in their field right off the bat, and can be really challenging to find one. So I felt like the experience and the ability to worked at the fly rod shop as a guide, being able to put that on my resume is going to translate into more money down the road.
Thank you, Matt.
Yeah. Thank you, Matt. Yeah. All right. Ashley Donahue, everyone.
Hi, my name is Ashley Donahue. I'm an environmental science major here at Johnson. I'm also a senior, and my internship was caretaking and long trail patrol at the Green Mountain Club. So here's a picture of the long trail. The blue dots are the places I have been. So the blue dots in the north are Mount Mansfield and Bolton Valley. The one in the center is Lincoln Gap, and the one near Rutland is Stratton Pond. So my internship was a paid internship at the Green Mountain Club. The two things I focused on most was caretaking and long trail maintenance. I found my internship on Facebook. I applied online. After applying online, I then got a Skype interview. After my Skype interview, I waited about a week to hear back. I got the internship. After getting the internship, I then received a packing list with all the things I needed for the summer. It was a very long packing list, and it was kind of confusing, but it's okay because I made it through. And then after I figured that all out, this is the crew that we had this summer. So this is split among caretakers and long trail patrol and interns. So there was 3 interns. So here's myself and the 2 others. So for the first 3 weeks of my internship, I was a caretaker on Mount Mansfield. So caretakers are along Vermont summits and ponds. So one of the places I stayed was Stone Hut. So Stone Hut is the picture on the left. It was rebuilt in 2015 due to a fire. The picture on the right is a picture on the inside. It has a huge table, 8 bunks, a wood stove, and a cool hanging system that we hung our food from in the woods, well, in the rafter from bears and critters. So one of the most important things as a caretaker on Mount Mansfield is protecting the alpine vegetation. So alpine vegetation is mostly sedge, spruce, and fir. So we protected it by outlining a white string. So the white string indicated not to walk on it. We asked people politely not to walk on it all the time. Another thing is that we clicked in people, so we did a count. So every time there was a person that entered the summit or the visitor center, we counted them, and then that grand total at the end was then reported to the Green Mountain Club at the end of the day. So one of the fun things I got to do is privy maintenance. So the picture on the left is a privy. A privy is used for human waste. You may not urinate in them. The picture on the right is me building a B2B system. A B2B system is usually placed on a day-use trail, which is mostly used by day hikers. So the B2B system has crushed coal, and the crushed coal is put in the bucket with pebbles, and then the urine will filter through that, and then it gets put back into the ground. So here's a picture of a privy system. So the big box you see on the right, which is right here, is the privy itself. The 5 buckets in the middle is the human waste. So those are filled up with human waste from the privy. Once those are completely filled, it goes into that big blue bucket on the left. The big blue bucket is filled with human waste and compost starter and mulch. Once that is in there, it's all stirred for like once or twice a week, and then it's put into that box, which is called the drying rack. The drying rack, it takes a few weeks for the compost to dry out, and then that is put back into the earth as soil. So the next 6 weeks, I was on long trail patrol. So I was stationed in Lincoln Gap for 2 weeks, and then I was stationed in Bolton Valley for a week, and then I was stationed in Stratton Pond for 2 weeks. So here's a picture of some stepping stones I uncovered from soil, and it's really important because it keeps the trail safer and more durable for people to walk upon. So some of the tools I used on long trail patrol is a rock bar, which is 5 feet tall. A rock bar is used to pry rocks from the ground and move to the trailhead, and then the rocks are used for like stepping stones or stairs. The next one is a pickmatic. The pickmatic is like about 4 feet tall, and it was used to cut tread, which is also known as trail. So we made a huge reroute in Stratton Pond that took 2 weeks. It was a lot of bending over and like picking at the ground and making sure it's nice and flat and even. The other tool we used is a double jack or sledgehammer, which is 3 feet long, and that is used to crush rock. So we crushed a lot of rock on trail, and it takes a long time to crush rock, but it's really fun. And also another thing we did with the crush is filled in holes and then put mineral soil on top to make it a more durable surface as well. So my take-home message is that it gave me some available options within my career, in my field, and it also gave me a hands-on experience in the outdoors, which I really enjoyed, and I gained an insight what I like to do in my future. And I'd like to thank Isaac, Alana, and Lauren Keegan for the opportunity to let me intern at the Green Mountain Club. I also like to thank Les for advising me through my internship, and I'm very appreciative for the experience I had. Thank you. Questions?
Hi, Lily
Hi.
Dunbar. Did you have to purchase those tools for yourself, or were they provided by the Green Mountain?
So they were provided by the Green Mountain Club. So they have like a huge barn that is full of tools that you could like imagine, and you go in and you get like ready for the week. So you like pack all the tools that you need. So we packed like multiple rock bars, pickmatics, and double jacks, and like many other tools too. Yeah.
When you were talking about your privy system,
Yeah.
you said something about BDB.
Yeah, so a B2B system is this huge 50-gallon bucket that we put into the ground. We dig a big hole, and then we put it in the ground, and it filters through crushed coal and like pebbles at the bottom, and then there's holes on the bottom of that bucket. And then after that, like urine is filtered through, it gets put into the ground as groundwater.
So what does the B stand for?
I'm not quite sure. Yeah.
How many hikers were there when you were collecting the data?
So like some days there's like 199 people that would visit the summit, and a lot of them are like visitors or like day use hikers, and some of them were like through hikers. So we had a lot of like visitations and a lot of picture taking. I've gotten asked many of times to take pictures of people on the summit and where the marker was, but it was really fun and it was a great time. Yeah.
Tabitha, I'm wondering, so did you have to carry all of those tools with you, like wherever you
went? Were they kind of nearby? Were you able to use them?
So we had a hike. So there's like sometimes we carried them in. So we hiked like miles in with tools on our back. Yeah, it's like a really heavy. It's like 20 pounds worth of tools. After hiking in, we would like cache them in the woods. So we like put a tarp over it and like make sure it was like safe, so like hikers couldn't steal tools from us. Yeah. Yeah.
What was the best meal you had during time there?
I would have to say the best meal I had was pizza. We cooked pizza on a Coleman stove, well, Coleman oven in the woods. So we hiked an oven in and we like cooked on top of it and made pizza. And it was pretty fun. Anything else? Yeah.
Hi, my name's Elizabeth, and what was one of the biggest challenges you faced during your internship?
Ooh, that's a great question. So the question was, what was my biggest challenge during this internship? So my biggest challenge was actually being away from home. Like, it gave me anxiety, but it was like a good anxiety because I was getting out of my comfort zone. So I think like being able to get out of my comfort zone and like experience this and being away from home and hiking was actually a great way to do it.
Time for one more question. Thank you very
Okay,
much.
thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Kelsey Jacobs, and I'm a senior at Northern Vermont University. I'll be graduating the conclusion of the spring semester from Linden, as I'm a dually enrolled student within both campuses, double major in criminal justice and biology field naturalist. This summer, I took an internship position with Vermont Fish and Wildlife within their fisheries department, working out of their access areas. Soon after the spring 2019 semester ended, I applied through Vermont.gov website for an internship position that Fish and Wildlife had recently posted. This was after numerous hours of sending drafts back and forth of my resume with Professor Les Kanat. About a week later, I was called in for an interview and was lucky enough to receive a job offer that would begin in June and go throughout the summer until I returned back to school. Through accepting the internship, it would allow me opportunities to participate in department meetings, working directly within Vermont Fish and Wildlife and at their self-owned access areas. You can see by also traveling to some of the sites, I was able to catch a glimpse of some of the natural world phenomena like fish beds, which I had never seen before. Working within the department also allowed me to make appropriate contacts, connections, and learn new career-enhancing skills. The majority of my summer took place at the Vermont Fish and Wildlife self-owned access areas, where I would conduct 3 different types of surveys and travel around the state. There, I would conduct surveys that would eventually give a numerical rating for each of the access areas that basically determines the good and the bad. The information I collected would also be used to put on the department website for public viewing. This helps boaters and anglers determine where they can launch their boats from based on water depth and boat ramp slope percentages. These pictures on the screen are of me completing one of the surveys that takes place within the water. One of the measurements was to determine the boat ramp slope percentage, and the first picture, you can see that I had to get in somewhat deep in the water, and using the big stick I'm holding, that was to measure the water depth, and then the surveyor's tape was to measure the boat ramp length. Some of the boat ramps were much too deep for me to walk in, so a float tube was used. And after each site visit, we used disinfectant to disinfect the float tube, the rod, and the surveyor's tape, as well as our waders, to ensure that we weren't transporting invasive species. To give a numerical rating for each of the access areas, the lake-wise assessment survey was put into an Excel spreadsheet where it could be evaluated. I should note that this survey that we did was not particularly made for the access areas, but rather for houses and camps on lake shores. So that's why some of the section questions won't directly pertain to our access areas. So each section went through with staff members and determined how much weight it would be given for an overall total. For example, section 1, the driveway area, was given a weight of 0.275, while the second section weight was only 0.1. This was because accessories don't really have septic systems, but we have driveways and parking lots. So within the Excel sheet, the scores for each of the section were added to come up with an overall total for the individual sites. For example, section 1, driveway area, Allen Point, was a total of 12. To come up with a numerical rating, the 12 was multiplied by the 0.275 and calculated out to be 3.3. After each section has its weighted total, these are added together to come up with the final weight, and that is basically the numerical rating. A separate sheet was created in order to put the access areas in numerical rating and kind of see where each of the access areas lie. So basically, the higher the weighted score, the better the access area is deemed, and then the lower the weighted score, more updating probably needs to be done. Throughout the summer, I also had the opportunity to be exposed of other pieces within the department. I was able to partake in electrofishing at different brook locations around the state. This is a multi-purpose process for long-term monitoring of population estimates, suppressions, and see if there's any other protections that need to take place based on criteria set by the state. These pictures show the data collection process of the brook trout. So using this yellow wand, the fish are shocked and then netted, and then using clove oil basically knocks the fish out. Just for a little while, they still live, so we can collect length measurements and also weights, and then this information is seen later on by fish specialists. Another opportunity I had was to participate in department meetings. I was able to go to a fisheries department meeting that took place at the newly built lab in Randolph, Vermont. There we were given updates and presented with some ongoing research for aquatic health. I was also able to be a part of Vermont Fish and Wildlife Department Day, where every staff member from around the state is invited, and there I was able to connect with many different people and kind of share my interests and goals for the future, where they were kind enough to give me feedback on some opportunities that may come about and help me get to where I want to be. A few quick acknowledgements to those that made this internship possible: my bosses, Mike Wachowski and Dylan Smith, for hiring me, the Vermont Fish and Wildlife Department for creating this opportunity, and my academic advisor, Les Kanat. Through this internship with Fish and Wildlife, I was able to gain experience, knowledge, and create contacts I would have otherwise never made. This experience extends far beyond earning credits towards school, though. It has helped guide me into my future endeavors and engage my thinking about what my next steps will be within Fish and Wildlife. I found careers and people that I certainly don't want to do and perhaps be like, but I've also found many opportunities within the department that will connect me further. Most importantly, through this process, I've met many people to help me succeed by giving me their reference, putting me in contact with others who will continue to aid guidance, and having the conversations to determine my next steps. All in all, I highly recommend that each and every one of you, if you have not already, connect with some internship opportunities and see what's out there, because you will not only gain everything that I have listed, but perhaps much more. You may find something that you're totally interested in and you can continue post the internship, or later on you find that it's something that you totally don't want to do, and maybe you find somebody that puts you in contacts with somebody else that gets you to where you want to be. So with that, are there any questions? Yes, Les. Yes.
The question is, how many access sites did you visit?
Just under 200. There's 197 total. And that's like, a lot of them are Lake Champlain sites, so that makes up a good majority of them.
And can you do more than one per day?
Yes, so before we went out, I had a coworker that I went out with in the field, and we kind of planned out each day, so approximately we were able to do 10 sites per day. So. Any other questions? Yes.
Okay, where was your internship basically centered on?
So I was out of the Montpelier office, and that's the office I worked out of, but then traveled all over the state, going to the different access areas. Yeah.
How are the brook trout doing?
Brook trout, as far as I can tell, they're pretty good. I honestly don't do a whole lot of brook fishing, so it was a lot for me to see. And I didn't realize that there were other species of fish within the brooks, so that was something new I learned. So, yeah. Oh, yep. There.
Hi, my name is Katie. What other species of fish are there in the brooks?
There's some black-nosed dace. Gosh. I'm not totally certain. I don't remember every one of them. They're bait fish, though. So they're not something that you catch and keep to eat, but you may catch to use for bait. Yeah.
What you had mentioned that you found careers you didn't want to pursue. Can you give us an example and how you came to that decision that it was not what you wanted?
Sure. So one of the people I worked with in the office, Nicole Meyer, she is great. She does a great job. She's kind of an outreach person, and I definitely don't want to do that because I can see how stressful trying to reach many people all over the state is. So I don't want to do that career because that's a lot of work trying to go on social media, sending out emails all the time, and that's just not something that that's not my strong point, is reaching a ton of people. Yep.
I know. My name's Elizabeth, and I know you said that you guys like knock out the fish. What do you knock out the fish with? Is it like an injection or?
So let me go back a couple slides. So this bucket right here, after the fish are collected, they're put into this little bucket, and there's just a small amount of clove oil, which is, if you know what that is, it's like I think something they use in the kitchen maybe, but it knocks the fish out. They kind of like twitch a little bit, and it just like relaxes them so they don't move, so you are able to take the length and weigh them. So and then they, after a short period of time, once they're put into the fresh water, they just go back to normal.
Thank you, Kelsey.
Thank you.
Okay. Hi, my name is Brendan Lanoue, and I did my internship at High Mowing Organic Seeds this summer. So the purpose of my internship was to learn about farming and have a lot of fun and just see if farm science might be something I might want to do. I had taken a soils class last semester, and I just was like really interested in the earth and like how it can make food for everybody. So I had zero farm experience going into this. I didn't know any of these, this list up on the slide right there. And now I know it enough to give a presentation to all of you. And you can see right there, it was a lot of fun because we had dogs. So there's Briar and Spittle and Chicory. So what is seed farming? So High Mowing doesn't grow these plants for you guys to eat. We grow them, and we take the seeds out of them, and then we dry them out and we put them in packages, and then we sell them at like Hannaford, and then your mom buys them and plants them in her garden, or we can sell to other farms, and they can grow the plants to be sold in Hannaford. So we don't grow these plants for you guys to eat. As you can see right there, those are pepper seeds, and they're drying out on the mesh. So we have this big crusher, and we throw the peppers in there, and it crushes up the peppers, and the seeds fall out, and then we just put them on the mesh and dry them out. So what is organic farming? According to the EPA, it's not using synthetic fertilizers or pesticides, and at high mowing, we don't use any synthetic fertilizers or pesticides. So we have a lot of weeds, and that's a lot of what I did this summer was pull weeds. And then also there's a lot of bugs. So that white stuff right there, we call it Rene, and it's just like a cloth. It's very thin. It lets the sunlight through, but it keeps the bugs out, and it also keeps the plants warmer because it's pretty chilly up here in Vermont. It extends our growing season a little bit. So hybrid seeds. So hybrid seed is when you have two varieties of the same species of plant. They have different traits. So the plant A is short, but it's bad tasting. And plant B is really tall and it's sweet tasting. So if plant A reproduces with itself, you get more of plant A. And the same thing with plant B. If it reproduces with itself, it gets plant B. But if you cross-pollinate them, you get a hybrid seed, and it has the traits of both the plants. So you get a sweet and a short stalk, which is what we're looking for. So we have Cornell researchers pick plants and do the genetics for us, and then out in the field, which is what I'm going to talk about next, we do the hand pollination. So hand pollination is the technique we use to interbreed these plants so we can get the hybrid seeds. So what we do is we go out the night before, and that's the male flower. We close up the male flower, and we close up the female flower with a twist tie. And the reason we do this is because in the morning, these flowers open up and they release their pollen. So we close them tight so that they don't release the pollen because we want to do it ourselves. And so what we do during the day is we go and we pick the male flower and we rip off the leaves. So that's the inside. It's hidden in there. And right on there is a bunch of male pollen. And what we do is we also rip off the half of the leaves of the female flower, and you can tell it's the female flower because it has this bulb here. So that bulb is where all the seeds are going to grow. And then what we do is we use the male flower and we paint the pollen right onto the pistil, is that little clump right there. We paint the pollen right onto the pistil, and that's all we do, because that's the pollen gets on there and then it starts making seeds. And so what we do is we close it right up so that no other pollen gets in there, and then we mark it, and that's how we know that it's been properly hybridized. So the reason we use hand pollination is because when we paint the pollen right onto the pistil, it gives us a very high chance that it hasn't been contaminated by any other pollen, so it gives us a really high chance that it's a proper hybrid. So I had a ton of fun this summer. I earned college credits. I made a bunch of money. I learned about farming when I had zero farming experience. I now know how to drive a tractor. And if any of you really like getting covered in dirt head to toe every single day, this is the job for you, and I really liked it. I might do that for the rest of my life. I don't know. Any questions? Sure.
Sarah, how do you guarantee that it is a proper hybrid? Do they take some of them and test them and try and grow them or something?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, we regrow them. So after they grow up, we have to take a batch of them, batch of the seeds, and we have a 100 seed test back at the warehouse, and they test and make sure that it's the right hybrid and all that stuff.
So when you're putting the twist ties on the flower, closing them up, do you ever like rip the petals or? I'm
Yeah.
just like wondering
We-
how gentle you have to
We
be.
have to be very gentle, but the flower the night before is already closed, right? So we're just kind of making sure it stays closed, so it works pretty well. Sometimes it does open up and we have to throw that flower out because we want to make sure that we got the proper hybrid. Yes.
So I have a garden at home, and every year the summer squash cross-pollinates with the zucchini, no matter what I do,
Right.
and I get these weird like yellow zucchinis.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a recommendation for gardeners to stop that from happening? Dying all the flowers.
So this is what we did in another of our fields. So instead of hand pollination, which is going plant to plant to plant, we did emasculation, which is we pulled off all the male flowers. And that's a lot of work because, you know, there's a bunch of flowers on the squash plant. So that's what you could do, but it's a lot of work. Yeah.
My name's Jaden. How many would you say that you've been pollinated a day?
Per day, we would usually do about 30 or 40 with a group of 3 of us. So, because like, in order to, you have to pick the flowers that are going to open up the next day, because if they don't open the next day, the pollen isn't ready. It has to be like fertile. So it depends on the plants really, whether or not they're ready. Right. Any other questions? Up in the back.
So when you produce the hybrid seeds, or when the hybrid seeds were produced, were any of those seeds planted to confirm that you actually had a hybrid, or did you just make that assumption they were?
Yeah,
Short and sweet, in other words.
So this is it's a delayed process. So like right now we just harvested all of our seeds out of the fields and we're gonna send them to go get tested. So in a couple months we'll find out if our hybrids were successful. We don't know yet. Yeah. Hey.
How much land did you have? How many?
I know we did at least 10 acres of squash, 3 or 4 acres of peppers, an acre each of different types of tomatoes. We had moonbeams, pink tie-dye, King of the North, lots of different ones. So like 20 plus acres or so.
Sarah, I'm curious, how was working considering June was such a wet, cold month? Like, all in all, what did you do during rainy days? Did you just dress appropriately?
So we do have some greenhouses, and we were growing cantaloupes in there. So whenever it was really rainy, we'd work in there and at the greenhouses. Yeah. I don't know if you saw the picture, like see right here, this is one of the greenhouses. And these strings are attached to every single plant, so we had to hook that up. And all those strings do is just help support the plant. So by the end, like we just ripped them out because we just harvested them. But these cantaloupe plants were, you know, taller than my head, all the way up there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brendan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Start my timer. Hi there, welcome to Northern Vermont University. My name is Erin Nichols. I am a biology major here at the Johnson campus, and I will be completing my degree this December. I'm excited to talk to you guys today about my internship with Vermont Fish and Wildlife. So at Vermont Fish and Wildlife, I work directly with the biologists and wildlife specialists on a multitude of species projects. This includes a lot of data collection, assessment, and entry, and also a lot of mechanical and technical work on vehicles that I was not really familiar with, but it's part of the job, and that's also associated with our projects. So the essence of my project experience was the Moose Project. Many of you may be familiar with this or heard about it recently in the news. The Vermont moose population has experienced a decrease in population productivity, and this is in large part due to environmental stressors such as winter tick, and that is associated with climate change. So the purpose of this project is to assess the survival rates of calves in the spring, summer, and winter months to better understand the effects of winter ticks on population densities. So a brief synopsis of the study: there are 30 cows, those are female moose, there's 30 cows and 30 calves that are collared with a GPS tracking system, and they are each tagged with a specific number, and that's how we keep track of them. So from the collaring, we're able to monitor the moose via radio telemetry. In order to do so, I have to create a series of maps. So there's a program called GPSX, and that is where all the signals from the collars go to. It's a database. It gives me the precise location of moose. So as you can see, these little spots here, those are the actual moose. This is the Northeast Kingdom. I forgot to mention, I work out of the St. Johnsbury district. It's huge. We have the most state lands to manage. So the territory is vast. So I use Google Earth to give me my bearings, and from there I create a GIS map, and I can manipulate that map to whatever scale I need. I then load that map onto my state phone, and then I use another mapping system called Avenza Maps, and that's really helpful when I'm out in the woods. It's this little blue dot, and it kind of shows me where I am in relation to the map. So from the mapping, once I've devised my maps and they're on my phone, I can go out and attempt to find these moose via radio telemetry. So with radio telemetry, this picture isn't that clear, but I have an antenna in my hand and a radio in the other. Each moose has a specific signal associated with their collar, so I tune into that, and I use the frequency to give me proximity of me in relation to the moose. And once I get a visual of the moose, I will note the forest type and any other specifications that are required, and I enter this data into the University of Vermont's database. So apart from actually finding the moose, we use tick counts. So previously deceased moose in the study, they are found in the woods with the mortality signal. So 2 graduate students working on this project out of the University of Vermont, they actually go perform a necropsy, a moose autopsy in the woods, retrieve what's left of it. Hopefully we have a good enough hide. The hide is frozen, then thawed, cut in half, and there are cross sections here with numbers. This is the crew working on counting ticks. So we have our own scalpels, we will cut, and we will meticulously count the ticks. We are looking for fully engorged females, nymphs, and adults and other species of tick. And again, this information is stored in the UVM database. The other component of my work with this project is administering hair loss cameras throughout various locations in the Northeast Kingdom at Salt Lick locations. So this is a photo of Moose 56. She does have a good story. It's not that bad. So this photo was taken on June 9th. And what we're looking for with the hair loss cameras, March through May 15th, is really the photographic data that we want to look at and assess, because the ticks are descending from moose at this point in time, late winter, early spring, and going on to their next stage in life on the ground. So you'll see pretty bad hair loss on some of these moose, and the rating system that we use is actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is a ghost moose. That moose is a goner, unfortunately. So you'll see in the previous side, 56, she is a cow. She's actually part of the study here with her collar and her ear tags. She rated a 3, and that's moderate. But I do have photos later on in the summer. She regained her coat, and she is healthy so far because we have more documentation of her. So the hair loss assessment really gives us more insight to not only the moose in the project, but other members of the population to see how ticks are affecting them in the winter. So my internship reflection, this was a really eye-opening experience for me because I had no idea how brutal the elements could be in the Northeast Kingdom. It was really grounding and humbling for me, and I'm really passionate about wildlife and protecting wildlife, biodiversity in general, and I had hoped, well, my current projection was to go into law enforcement, but I'm kind of reevaluating my career goals, also my academic goals, and I think at this point I want to pursue more science, as well as maybe pursue a degree in policy so I can be the one who enacts change in an inevitably changing climate. I want to protect the species in our state and all over the place. And any questions? Yes?
How did you like tag the moose and like put a radio collar on them?
Yeah, so there's a lot of specific questions I knew were going to be asked about this, and that is one thing I wanted to get into, but I didn't know if I would have enough time. So Fish and Wildlife commissioned a private company. Their origin is in New Zealand. I know the pilot, at least. He's from New Zealand. It's a helicopter crew, and they descend upon these locations where there's an abundance of moose in the Northeast Kingdom, and these are previously mapped out locations that biologists have kind of scouted. And so each moose is collared and tagged within 5 minutes. It's done in a very humane way. And essentially these guys are moose wranglers. Yes? Hi, Lisa.
If these moose are GPS collared, why do you use radio telemetry to find them and not use GPS?
Not use a GPS?
So on the ground.
You know, that's a really good question. This is how I was taught to go out. Yeah, and also there might be some data too that I've mentioned, and it's all preliminary. There are 2 UVM grad students working on this project, and there will be 2 papers published later this, I think by this winter, there should be 2 published. But Lisa, to answer that, I'm not quite sure. I do bring a GPS and a compass with me. Yeah, I'm like way out of my element out in the Northeast Kingdom. Like this, the first day I went out by myself, I had a couple successful moose walk-ins, and then my last one, I was in the middle. I was like 2 miles in the woods, and my GPS was not working. It was not acquiring satellites, and I was hyperventilating. I was like, okay, I'm gonna get out of here somehow. And I just had to kind of take a deep breath and reevaluate the situation and use critical thinking. And so this internship has really enabled my critical thinking as well. Yeah, it's like the time of my life. And also, I forgot to mention, I was offered a job with Fish and Wildlife, so I'm currently employed as a wildlife technician. So essentially, I do everything that I've been doing with the biologists in my internship. Yes?
Hi, my name's Elizabeth, and did they teach you anything if you were to run into a moose? And I have another question is, those collars that they're wearing, how do you track their growth with the collars? Since I see that they're loose, but like as they start to grow older.
That's a really good question. So with the collars, I'm not sure how they fit them, but they do expand with growth. And you'll see a lot of these moose that we have on camera, they don't look that healthy because there's a lot of nutritional stress on them. Apart from significant blood loss, they are nutritionally stressed out because they're not eating. They are so consumed with ridding themselves of ticks. Moose are the largest member of the deer family. However, they cannot groom themselves as well as deer because of their size. And they're taking off important guard hairs by rubbing, and yeah, it's just a mess in the winter. But anyway, I'm not quite sure how they fit them, but they do expand. And your first question, what do I do in the case of running into a moose? I have, fortunately, tomorrow I'll be out finding them, and I was yesterday. I saw a bull yesterday with a cow and her calf, so that was really cool. This time of year, you're gonna see bulls out with the cows, and it's just like front row wildlife watching at its best. But females, like most species, you want to maintain your distance when they have their offspring with them, but no one's really told me anything. I guess it's just kind of like common sense being an outdoorsman. Hey, don't go pet the mom or the baby. But I'm not dealing with grizzly bears here, but they are territorial. Any other questions? Yes.
Sarah.
Hey.
Erin, is that a picture of your moose? What was it, 56? Is that?
This is not 56. This is an uncolored, numberless moose. But he's healthy. I mean, she's healthy. Yeah, so this is what moose will look like. So this is in July. They'll get their coat back. And you'll still see, if you get a few good photos, you'll still see ticks on their hindquarters. The most significant loss is on their shoulder. Yeah, I will spare you guys what I felt bad showing you the tick counts because those are pretty gnarly, but it was very intense going through and just imagining what these animals are feeling being infested with ticks like that. And I myself was covered in ticks after some of my walk-ins. And they're gonna start coming out again. So I'll have more on me. Any more questions? No? Okay. You want to take the Shoot, how do I get out of it? I don't know. I use Apple. Oh no.
Alrighty. Hello, welcome everybody. My name is Rene Speas. I am a senior here at Johnson, and I did my internship this summer with the Vermont Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets, and we did a survey looking for a mosquito species called Aedes albopictus. So the reason why I took an internship was to get credits to graduate on time, and it looks really good on a resume. They also paid me pretty well, so that was a bonus. Like I said, it was with the Vermont Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets. I was a mosquito and tick technician. I found my internship through my dad. He works with the Vermont Agency of Natural Resources. So he asked if they had any internship possibilities. I still had to apply and do an interview to be able to get my internship. So some of these pictures up here, this is not my, all right. This was me and a coworker doing tick collection. If you can see, she has a white flag in her hand, which we would drag across the ground to collect ticks. This is me at the microscope looking at mosquitoes. In the middle, you can see that there are 2 mosquitoes. You can see that they're different gendered by the feathering on the antenna. In the bottom left, you can see a schematic that we would use to identify the mosquitoes based on the shape of their body and the banding on their legs. And this is a picture of my coworker Dylan when we were doing our surveying. So Aedes albopictus is an urban mosquito. It is also known as the Asian tiger mosquito. It is normally found in the tropics and subtropics, but it has been found in all of the neighboring states and not yet here in Vermont. It's considered one of the top 100 invasive species, like I said, because it's not typically found around here. And all of the Aedes mosquitoes are potential vectors for diseases like Zika, dengue, Chayunga, and Dirophalariasis, which is a parasite commonly found in dogs. There are 2 other species in the Aedes genus, and they are Aedes aegypti and Aedes japonicus. So the first part of the survey was to choose our locations. We based our locations off of places where people usually go through, so like welcome centers, truck stops, and marinas, because they were being brought in through vehicles. They can also be transferred in through used tire sales, so we would set up at tire warehouses or trash drop-offs because the trucks go in and out of those places. We selected 40 sites and 35 stayed continuously throughout the survey. And this map is what I made. You can see we had 4 different routes, A, B, C, and D, and each of them had 10 to begin with, and then as places like dropped out, we stopped going to them. So for the setup for the traps, we had cups, which we actually use cemetery vases because then we wouldn't have to worry about them falling over. The cups then were filled with an infusion. The infusion is made of hay, oak, brewer's yeast, and lactobumene, and then sits there for a couple of days and becomes coffee brown and smells like death. And then we get to fill up these cups with that, and then we put the paper in. The paper is what they actually will lay their eggs on. And so when we go to collect, we just take the paper and we get rid of the infusion. And for each site, we set up 3 traps. So our number counts are by site and not by individual trap. So for our collection, we would collect once a week for 10 weeks. It started the first week in July. And when we would collect, we would take data regarding the temperature of the air, the temperature of the infusion, and the humidity in the air. We're not sure if any of those have any factors on the mosquitoes reproducing, like the levels they will reproduce at. So we were interested to look at that eventually. But it also attracted other animals. So here you can see snails or slugs. They would eat the paper. So like we would get paper back sometimes and it would have like giant holes in it from these slugs eating holes in it. And then this one you can see a frog got caught in it. So for our results, we actually found Aedes albopictus here in Windham County. We're not sure if this is an established population or if this population came in and it will be eradicated by our harsh winter, as they are not made to go through a harsh winter. So once we collected the eggs, we would then dry the papers and count them. On the left, you can see what the eggs would look like under a microscope. Our largest count was in week 3 of our survey, and it was 6,347 eggs for one site. So the majority of my time was spent with a counter, sitting there, counting eggs. And the ID of these eggs is near impossible. So then, as you can see, I'm packaging up the papers. We then sent them to Massachusetts so they could rear them to be able to identify what species they were, because you can't tell what species they are from the eggs themselves. And rearing the mosquitoes is really hard, which is why it was so helpful that Massachusetts agreed to help us rear these eggs for us. So the next steps for our survey is receive all of our results from Massachusetts, and then we need to analyze these results and publish them up on our website, and then we'll have to continue monitoring for Aedes albopictus in the future. And it's unclear how this internship will affect my future career, as I really don't have that many plans for a future career. But I got to see a lot of beautiful sights. Like this is Lake Champlain, and like somebody built a little home out of this tree. And like I just got to see some really cool things for this internship. And I could see myself working for the Agency of Agriculture again for sure. So I'd like to thank Eliza, who worked with me really closely, and Dylan, and then I'd like to thank Les for helping me with the presentation and everything. So if anybody has any questions. Yeah.
Did you find that it was very tedious counting the eggs and difficult to sit continuously do?
So the nice thing about it was that I could sit there all day and listen to podcasts. So I would just like put in my headphones and just like go to town counting eggs all day. So like, yes, it was tedious and at times it could be boring, but like also I had a lot of fun while I was doing my internship. And I also got to listen to whatever I wanted to listen to. So, you know, it was cool.
Yeah. Can you explain the mixture, like why that mixture?
Yeah. So we didn't come up with the infusion recipe. Actually, Massachusetts came up with it as they had done like the research like before. And we even didn't start with the infusion as I had listed it. We didn't add the lactalbumin until week 5 because we were late with our ordering. So it wasn't so important that it had all of those ingredients in it. It was just important that it would smell and attract the mosquitoes. And I think it smelt because we just let those things just sit in the water. So yeah, ferment.
Yeah. Could DNA sequencing be used to identify the organisms rather than rearing?
I'm sure that it could. I don't know if any state is doing that, and I'm sure that you could do it from the egg samples themselves, but I don't know how hard it would be to get DNA from those samples when they're so small. You know what I mean? Because you can't mix a bunch of eggs assuming that they're the same and get DNA out of them. So I don't really know. Also, DNA testing is not as cheap as rearing. So we cut costs by deciding to rear.
Once you had reared the mosquitoes, would you kill them to identify them? Or?
So we didn't rear them, Massachusetts reared them, and I'm not sure what they did with the mosquitoes after they reared them. I don't know what keeping them would do per se, but they were able to do what they wanted with them.
So you were getting your results from them based on...
So like we would send the eggs to them, they would rear them, and then send back whether or not they got any to hatch, and then they would send back if they were Aedes albopictus or not, because it could have also been either the other species in the Aedes genus.
Yes. Renee, I'm Sarah. Was it hearsay amongst the staff that you worked with that it's hard to rear, or did you actually learn some about about rearing is so difficult? Rearing has to be in a very controlled environment for this species. So it's difficult because we don't have the supplies to do the rearing ourselves, whereas Massachusetts has the ability to do the rearing, and it wasn't so hard for them because they had already been doing rearing for years. So it was very nice of them to take that on for us. Any other questions? Yes.
Just a side question. You mentioned you worked with Eliza.
Yes, I did.
Is that Eliza Doncaster?
Yes, it is.
Would you like to tell the audience who she is?
Eliza Doncaster works in the entomology lab, which is where I worked in Randolph. She graduated from here. She got her internship there. Somebody was promoted, and then she got a job there. So not that I'm necessarily going to do that, but that's what she did. And so the internship really opened up a door for her. And I think that it also opened up a door for me because I could definitely see myself doing this survey again next summer or something. So.
Thank you very much. One more comment about Eliza. So Eliza was in Current Topics, and the speaker was the director of the mosquito lab for the state of Vermont. And so she took an internship with one of the speakers who was here, and then when he retired, she took her position, and It looks like you're moving up to take her position. So that's great. Really, we had some great presentations today. One more round of applause for all our two speakers.